I was counting my blessings, I felt beaten down. I was looking for a calling, felt lonely in a crowd. I was searching for the answers, too blind to see the signs. He was always by my side. He shed his light and picked me up.
This is interesting to me. When I get stuck in sin, it's often because I'm trying to keep one eye on Jesus while also keeping one eye on things of this world. My desires, my comfort, my well-being, my popularity, and so on. These things don't start out as sin, but without Jesus as my primary vision, they quickly lead me in that direction. Other times I've been obsessed with overcoming my sin, that I'm fixated on the sin rather than looking to Jesus for the strength to overcome it. To me, I have a hard time. I don't really get that part. He sacrificially took on the weight and death of all our sin and guilt so we don't have to. So then it feels like I owe someone something. But it's like not necessarily true, because I do feel the weight of sin and guilt and things of that sort. But then when you put it in the perspective of like what it says, further down, of like when you're getting stuck in sin and you're not completely looking at him, looking to him, to kind of, I guess maybe it's like sharing that pain is what it's like really saying. Like it's maybe not so necessarily like direct. But see, then also to me, but without Jesus as a primary vision, they quickly lead me in that direction of sin. And so it's like, it's my whole entire, like you're saying that like I really need to like focus in on Jesus, and like he's my number one, and not the things that I desire. And I mean, that's what it says. It says, my desires, my comfort, my well-being, but he is my priority. And so to me, that's kind of like scary or like uncomfortable, because then I'm putting all this focus on this one person or man or God, and like that's just like a lot of control, I guess. And yeah, I guess I do kind of like struggle with complete surrender, because I don't agree with everything that I read in this Bible. I'm kind of just more so like curious if putting Jesus back into like the forefront for me is like would really help improve my life. I mean, even through like life coaching school, I learned early on that like it is so important to have something that you believe in outside of yourself in most cases, which doesn't mean that you can never, but in a lot of cases it's very, very hard for you to lean on yourself, or like yourself be the only factor as to why you're improving yourself. There's almost always outside forces, whether it being like your family or your dreams, your goals. And a lot of the times God or the universe is that huge factor that you lean on to give you that strength to overcome or achieve what it is that you're doing at that time in your life. So like I really have this understanding of like leaning into God and surrendering would probably really help me have that further belief in myself, because a lot of the times it is so hard for me to believe on my own and to know that there's someone else like rooting for me, I can imagine how that would be so powerful and beautiful. Even saying it, I can feel that emotion behind that. And like, girl, I guess I just got some major abandonment issues that it's just so scary to me to like allow Jesus to like be that center, or that person, or God that I every day share that weight of what I'm dealing with. Probably one, because man, patriarchy, and because I don't just believe in things in the Bible, I believe in so much more. And I think also the way that religion, Christianity, Catholicism, like all of it's been twisted so much throughout the years that it's very hard to find my own relationship with Jesus. Search your heart with God and look for any sin pattern that you've been trying to manage on your You guys will have to bear with me today. I'm having the worst allergies. My equilibrium's off. I feel off. My sinuses are so dry. But I have makeup I want to play with, some new makeup. I was sharing on my Instagram last night that I was looking for a mattifying skin tint, or like moisturizer, tinted moisturizer type of product that had a good medium coverage, but wasn't something that was like a full beat, or that I had to really like take the time in every single morning to like pull together, that it would just be something that was easy. So we're gonna try this one here by Fenty. This is the Ease Drop Blurring Skin Tint. All right, I just closed the window so we can just get my lighting here just off the bat. And it could just be the base that I used here by Essence, but I do feel like I can see some texture in my skin, and I hope that it's not the skin tint that brought that out. However, I really do like this skin tint. You can see that there's a clear, like there's makeup, but it looks like my skin. I'm gonna assume that this might be a little bit more matte or like satin without the added glow. I'm gonna add another layer of this just because I want to see if I can get like more medium coverage. Oh yeah, definitely still with this first layer, you can still like see my skin, my freckles. You can see some of my little acne spots. And then like I said, you can still see texture. I don't know how people feel about this like segment of videos where I just sit down and talk while I do my makeup. I personally enjoy it, but if it's not something that is visually appealing to see like on camera, I can definitely try and find the time to switch this kind of like talking portion over to like maybe podcast episodes or something. I just want to see how like sit down talks, chats while we do our makeup does. Back in the day, OG YouTube, we used to call it chit chat get ready with me's. So it means like you sit down and you talk while you get ready. But I don't see a lot of people doing that anymore. People kind of just go with like vlog, you know? Anyways, as I was saying, I was going to talk about therapy a little bit. So what we've kind of discovered so far
and I only sharing like what I'm comfortable with, and I might not share everything. It's completely up to me to cut out what I don't want out. You know, that inner child, there's like a 6-year-old version of me who is sad and needs help, and her story needs to be shared, right? And we haven't gotten there yet, because the first time that my therapist pulled at that, I started crying. So it was like kind of just like, we don't have to talk about this now. Like, let's let you keep processing things, you know? We can revisit this at any time. We just want to get her comfortable with coming forward and sitting with us in this room, so that way she can tell her story. So we've been kind of working for weeks now on just me expressing my feelings in these sessions. And it's so funny too, because like I'll have a cry about something and she'll be like, how did that feel? How did it feel to like see, like hear the thought, feel the feeling behind the thought, process the feelings, cry through the feelings, and then be like, okay, but I didn't die and the world didn't end. So that's been interesting to be experiencing. And in my last session, we did a like kind of check-in review. She wanted to basically say, this is where we started off, you know, when we first got you in here. This is some of the progress. Do you feel like you've made any progress? And in what ways do you feel like you've seen progress in your life since coming to therapy? And then kind of saying, okay, is there anything that we want to change with what we're doing? Is there anything you want to add into therapy? So she mentioned EMDR. So then we get into like the session after doing our little review of, you know, how it's been going. We get into the session and we discover that there's a 20 to 23-year-old me who essentially needs my help. I'm not gonna lie, my face feels kind of greasy right now. And the thing is that I'm trying 2 new products, so I don't know which one it feels like greasy, but one of these feels kind of greasy. Yeah, so we're getting into this conversation of this 20 to 23-year-old version of me who needs my help. And I was expressing to her how like I don't feel anything towards her. I don't feel angry. I don't feel happy. I don't feel any like I don't feel anything towards her. I just see that she exists there, but I don't look at her. If anything, I have my hand out to her because I don't want to revisit her. And so in all of the questions that therapists ask, we kind of bring this conversation to me putting her visually, like trying to visualize, because she's trying to get me to connect my feelings to her. But again, it just comes back, I have nothing. I can't come up with anything. There's no emotion towards her. There's no feeling. I know that I've disassociated from her completely. I've completely detached myself from her. So she kind of has me like, if you can picture, you know, a feeling or something like. So I kind of am like, okay, if I like picturing 20 to 23-year-old me, I feel there's a canvas. I have this canvas. It's a black and white painting canvas, and it's me in my room, very like small, and above, like in larger, you know, bodies is her dad and her boyfriend, and her dad is not looking at her boyfriend's not looking at her. Her best friend is on her phone, but she can't get her phone to connect to her best friend, so she's in her room all alone, and these people in her life aren't looking at her, and it's dark outside on this canvas. So she's kind of just like, okay, like tell me how you feel like looking at her. I'm like, oh, I'm not looking at her. Like I can't look at her. Like I don't want to look, you know, like I look and she looks away, and then she looks at me and I look away, and then I'm trying to look and she looks away. Like we're just like doing this back and forth in my head while I'm in therapy. And so she's like, what would it take for you to look at her? So I'm like, okay, like if I can pick her up out of my canvas and place her outside the canvas, then I think I can look at her. And so we kind of like come to the end of my therapy, and she's like telling me, again, trying to connect like feelings towards her, I'm like, well, I don't feel anything towards her. I'm not angry at her, but I'm not necessarily her friend. I don't want to be her friend because she has a lot of this baggage that I don't want to take on. I'm afraid if I look at her, I'm gonna take it as my own, and I repeat that, and I don't want to do that. And then kind of coming around to like, well, when I do look at her, like, she's like, can you help me? But I'm not acknowledging her yet. So again, my therapist kind of comes back around to like, well, you know, let's say there's any kind of feeling, like what would it be? Like, even if it's not within her or within you, because that's what I said connect, like me and her looking at each other, I don't feel anything besides this. If anything, I can feel fear in my body and I can feel fear in her body, but there's no other emotion or feeling there besides maybe sadness. But the sadness isn't in my body, and the sadness isn't in her body. The sadness is outside of us. We've taken the sadness outside of our bodies, and it's floating there, and it's just an energy in between us. Which is kind of a lot to understand, but it's just like how I'm visually seeing it. I guess I see it visually. And so towards the end of my session, she was like, so you guys are looking at each other now, like what can you feel from her, or like, you know, what do you see now? And I'm like, well, she seems kind of excited that I've at least acknowledged her. And my therapist was like, yeah, like basically we can't go in and like do stuff like talk about, you know, you from 2023 if you're not willing yet. Like if you don't want to look at her, because that's you, it's me. If you don't want to look at her, like sure, she might be ready, but you might not be. And it could be the other way around, where she might not be ready but you are. So we just can't do that yet if both of you don't agree to it. And so I'm like, well, she's excited, but I don't know that I'm completely there. I think if anything, her excitement kind of gives me courage, is giving me courage to like feel okay with this. And she had said to me, well, yeah, it must feel like a great relief to her that out of the people in her life, because like you said, there's the dad and the boyfriend, and then there's the best friend in the phone. None of them are looking at her, but like it must be a relief that you finally are, that one person's looking at her, and it happens to be you. And I was like, damn. She was like telling me like, you have 2 weeks to decide until our next therapy session if like you're ready to go into it, things with her, like if you're ready to help her. Because like I said, we had already visited the 6-year-old, and the 6-year-old version of me was not, we can't do that yet. But so kind of just like, are we gonna start helping the 20 to 23-year-old version of me now? And I truly don't know, because like I couldn't look at her. And I mean, I said it out loud, like I don't want to be her friend, but I'm talking about myself. Like I'm saying I don't want to be my own friend, which is a lot, like that's why we're in therapy, because you definitely like want to have a good enough relationship with yourself that like you can at least look at each version of yourself and the different phases of life. And you know, 20 to 23 was a really, really hard time for me. And although I'm not angry at myself anymore for that time, what I will say that I think is interesting right now is how I'm meeting the versions of myself at the different points in my life that have created like this trauma, or you know, which is why I'm in therapy, and how like I'm like facing them at my own pace, of course, but also getting to see like how if I weren't in therapy, I could easily continue not to acknowledge them, you know? Because like even though we haven't gone into like the 6-year-old version of myself and her story, we've at least like said to her like, hey, we see you and we invite you into this room, and even though you aren't ready yet to like voice what's going on, or like, you know, what you experience, like, we acknowledge it, right? We acknowledge you and we'll come back around. And then here we are again with this 23-year-old self doing the same thing of like, hey, come into the room with us, like, it's okay to be here. I just wouldn't do that on my own. I wouldn't be able to like recognize if that's what was needing to be happened like on my own. So therapy, I think, is like really great for me so far, and I'm sure it can benefit a lot of people. And I know everyone has their own opinions on it and their own experiences, and it's very hard. There are so many times I don't want to go in. I mean, this last session, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about because I felt like I was having a decent week and like my anxiety wasn't too heavy, and then it was like, oh shit, we're moving on to the next version of myself, and like if this is the one that I'm ready to like get into. Because the way that we've been talking about things is kind of like now discovering right now how I'm coping with life and coping with anxiety and, you know, coping with the stuff. Yeah, I would say the last 6 sessions is unraveling how I talk to myself, how I cope, how I deal, what my ideologies are, my perspectives are, and now it's kind of like, okay, now we can start pulling these versions of yourself, those pieces, and let them kind of express themselves, and that could be scary.